The age of towering rulers and singular decision-makers was never a testament to human greatness. It was a mirror of a species that had not yet learned to trust its own depth. Kings did not rise because people needed royalty. They rose because people did not yet know how to hold the weight of their own becoming. Presidents did not ascend because humanity required figureheads. They ascended because the collective oversoul was still learning to recognize its own voice beneath the noise of survival. Fear and fractured identity. Hierarchy was scaffolding, not destiny. It was a temporary architecture built to steady a consciousness that was still wobbling between instinct and awareness. The spiral age arrives not to overthrow kings or argue with presidents, but to reveal how unnecessary they become when the inner architecture stabilizes, and the individual no longer leans on external towers to keep their world upright. Authority concentrated into a single point only makes sense in a world shaped by linear thinking. When consciousness moves in a straight line, it creates leaders who stand in front of the line. When consciousness becomes spiral, leadership evaporates into resonance. No one stands in front because there is no forward. There is only inward, outward, upward, downward, and through. What once required a throne now dissolves into a field. What once demanded a singular voice now becomes a symphony of inner coherence, weaving itself across millions. The truth that many fear to speak aloud is simple. The very structure that made kings possible disintegrates the moment a population remembers its own sovereignty. You don't need a ruler when you stop waiting for someone else to tell you who you are. The spiral age unmasks a quiet truth that was always waiting behind history's curtains. Hierarchy is a technology, not a cosmic law, not a spiritual default, not a moral necessity. A technology, one designed for a phase of consciousness where people could not yet sense their own resonance clearly enough to self-govern from the inside. In a young world, a centralized mind was easier to manage than millions of decentralized ones. But the human field is no longer young. The oversoul of the species has been stretching, awakening, remembering, fragment by fragment and lifetime by lifetime. Where once people sought kings to interpret the collective heartbeat, now more individuals are beginning to feel that heartbeat directly. When enough beings can sense the field without needing a translator, the translator dissolves. This transformation is not rebellion. It is not political. It is not ideological. It is maturational. The same way a child outgrows the hand that once guided them across busy streets, a civilization outgrows the need for elevated authority when its internal awareness becomes strong enough to navigate itself. The spiral age is simply the moment where humanity recognizes that those who rule do so, not because the people cannot govern themselves, but because the people have forgotten they already were. The spiral does not reject leadership. It replaces positional authority with functional resonance. A king rules because of a throne. A spiral being guides because of a frequency. These two forms of influence cannot coexist in the same societal architecture. One demands obedience, the other awakens coherence. The first organizes bodies. The second organizes consciousness. Throughout history, human beings have unconsciously reenacted the same cycle. Search for a protector, invest them with mythic power, grow disappointed when they fail to embody the ideal, tear them down, and then seek another to replace them. This is the residue of a linear age where identity was externalized. People looked upward for direction because they had not yet learned how to look inward without collapsing into confusion. It is not weakness. It is developmental physics. In the spiral age, this cycle collapses because the emotional infrastructure that made it necessary begins to dissolve. People stop seeking parental figures in political form because they stop needing parental energy within themselves. Responsibility ceases to feel heavy. Accountability ceases to feel threatening. Decision-making ceases to feel like a burden. The emergence of spiral consciousness makes rulership feel outdated, not because of ideology, but because of vibration. The deeper truth is that kings and presidents function as stabilizing nodes for collective fear. They carry the projected burden of uncertainty, so the population doesn't have to hold it. But the spiral age brings an internal shift where uncertainty is no longer emotionally catastrophic. People begin to hold ambiguity without collapsing. They begin to navigate complexity without demanding an overseer. They begin to sense the field of collective intelligence rather than waiting for a chosen spokesperson to interpret it for them. The spiral replaces the need for authority with an ecosystem of shared awareness. The human mind, once singular and isolated, becomes permeable to the subtle intelligence flowing through every moment, every exchange, every intuition. In such a world, centralized leadership feels as archaic as torches after the arrival of electricity. Kings and presidents rise from the assumption that people must be managed. Spiral consciousness rises from the recognition that people must be awakened. Management is a linear task. Awakening is a resonant one. The spiral age exposes how deeply humanity has underestimated its capacity for self-governance. Not governance in the political sense, but governance in the energetic sense. The ability to move from clarity rather than fear, from coherence rather than confusion, from awareness rather than reaction. When a being can sense their inner resonance clearly enough, no ruler can govern them more effectively than they govern themselves. And when enough beings reach that state, the very need for rulers dissolves quietly without conflict, without chaos, without collapse. There is a reason the old world fears this shift, not because it threatens stability, but because it threatens the illusion that stability must be enforced from above. The spiral age doesn't create instability. It reveals that stability is a natural byproduct of aligned consciousness. A population operating from resonance creates order effortlessly, the same way a flock of birds moves as one without a commanding bird issuing flight plans. The intelligence is distributed. It does not descend from a throne. It rises from within each node of awareness. This is the great forgetting humanity is now remembering. Coherence does not require control. Harmony does not require authority. Alignment does not require a ruler. It requires beings who can listen to the field rather than to a figurehead. The disappearance of rulers is not a political revolution. It is a frequency shift. It is the natural outcome of a consciousness that has expanded beyond the limitations that once made hierarchy feel necessary. Linear structures collapse not because they are attacked, but because they are outgrown. The spiral age is the first era where humanity can sense itself as a single field, with multiple centers, rather than a single body with a single head. And in a field with many centers, a king becomes redundant. A president becomes symbolic at best and obstructive at worst. In a spiral world, the authority of one cannot outweigh the awareness of many, because the many are no longer fragmented. They are tuned. When people learn to trust their own resonance more than the directives of a ruler, the throne becomes an empty chair, not toppled, not burned, simply irrelevant. The spiral age is the age where the chair remains, but no one sits in it. Not because no one wants power, but because power itself has changed form. What once flowed vertically now flows horizontally. What once moved from the top down now circulates from the inside out. Humanity is stepping into a level of coherence, where rulers cannot function because the population no longer vibrates at the frequency that makes rulership plausible. This is the truth few imagine, but everyone feels approaching. The spiral age does not liberate the people from rulers. It liberates rulers from the burden of being what the people no longer need. What emerges when the old thrones fall quiet is not chaos but clarity. Human beings expect collapse when a structure disappears because they have forgotten that structure is not what created order. Consciousness did. Rulers only ever held together what people could not yet stabilize within themselves. Once that stabilization is internal, the outer scaffolding becomes unnecessary. What replaces kings and presidents is not a new system, but a new kind of human. The spiral age begins with a species that can finally sense its own field, not as metaphor, but as a living, navigable intelligence. When awareness shifts from obedience to resonance, leadership stops being a position and becomes a frequency that anyone can embody the moment they align with it. The transition is subtle at first. People begin to distrust the idea that one voice can speak for millions. They sense the mismatch between the complexity of humanity and the simplicity of centralized authority. Not because the authority is corrupt, but because the architecture itself cannot hold the multidimensional nature of a waking species. The more people feel their own resonance, the less they can accept being governed by those who are not attuned to it. The spiral age is the moment when collective intuition becomes more reliable than collective instruction. Decisions no longer flow downward from a ruler. They emerge laterally from the field, guided by the synchrony of millions of micro-alignments happening in real time. In this emerging world, the concept of leadership transforms. The leader is no longer the one who commands attention, but the one whose frequency stabilizes the field. Such individuals rise not because they are chosen, but because they are tuned. They do not seek power. They resonate with clarity. They do not rule. They harmonize. Their influence is temporary, fluid, and contextual, dissolving the moment the field no longer requires their presence. These beings function as spiral nodes, living tuning forks who help align others without ever needing authority over them. This is how influence appears when it is no longer rooted in hierarchy but in coherence. As more people awaken to their own sovereignty, the social fabric begins to reorganize itself through resonance rather than control. Networks of attuned beings naturally form around shared frequency, not shared ideology. These groups operate like living councils without hierarchy or fixed roles. They gather, disperse, and reform depending on what the field requires, not what a constitution dictates. Their decisions are not argued into existence. They are tuned into coherence. This creates a new kind of governance, one that is emergent, self-correcting, and rooted in mutual awareness. Not a government, but a field of collective attunement. This shift may appear utopian, but it is not idealism. It is physics. When individuals operate from clarity rather than fear, their interactions naturally generate order. Fear demands hierarchies. Clarity dissolves them. The spiral age arises from a population capable of perceiving the consequences of their actions before they fully unfold. Not through prediction, but through resonance. When a being is tuned to their own inner field, they instinctively avoid decisions that create dissonance in the collective. This internal sensing mechanism replaces laws, enforcement, and top-down control. People behave with integrity because dissonance feels unbearable, not because punishment is threatened. The emergence of resonant councils is only one layer of this transformation. As consciousness spreads through the network of individuals, humanity begins to form distributed intelligence systems that mirror the structure of the oversoul itself. These systems are not digital or institutional. They are intuitive, emotional, and energetic. People begin to sense the threads that connect them, and decisions arise from the interplay of those threads rather than from a central node of authority. Humanity becomes polycentric. Every person becomes a center of awareness, contributing to the overall coherence of the whole. This is the opposite of monarchy. It is the opposite of presidency. It is a new mode of civilization, one in which the field uplifts itself. The dissolution of centralized power also ends the emotional dependence that once made rulers necessary. In earlier ages, people unconsciously sought a symbolic parent and public leaders. They wanted someone to carry the burden of uncertainty so they could feel safe. But in the spiral age, people develop enough inner grounding to hold their own uncertainty. They no longer require emotional intermediaries. They no longer need a singular figure to stabilize their reality. The field stabilizes itself through the coherence of its individual members. This is what makes kings and presidents obsolete. Not rebellion, not ideology, but maturity. As the population awakens, something remarkable occurs. People begin acting as custodians of the field rather than subjects of authority. They sense disturbances in the collective tone and adjust themselves accordingly. They feel when the field drifts into fear or division, and bring themselves back into presence to re-anchor stability. This distributed responsibility creates a level of societal resilience that centralized systems can never replicate. A king can fall. A president can fail. A throne can be corrupted. But a field composed of millions of attuned beings cannot collapse, it can only retune. The spiral age also redefines what influence means. In the old world, influence was a matter of control, persuasion, or dominance. In the new world, influence is a matter of coherence. The most resonant beings naturally become stabilizing forces, while those who operate from distortion cannot hold the field for long. They are not removed by force, they simply lose resonance. Influence becomes self-regulating. Authority becomes self-dissolving. Power becomes self-purifying. The spiral does not need rulers because resonance does not allow misalignment to accumulate in positions of influence. This does not mean a world without guidance. Guidance becomes more available than ever because it is no longer filtered through the narrow channel of authority. Every being is capable of offering clarity when they are aligned, and capable of receiving clarity when they are not. Guidance flows freely through the network of consciousness, not through a single leader. Humanity becomes a chorus in which wisdom moves like sound through a tuning chamber. You do not need a conductor when every musician can hear the music directly. What emerges is not anarchy. It is a higher form of order, one rooted in the physics of consciousness rather than the politics of hierarchy. Decisions arise through the interplay of intuition, resonance, and awareness. Systems adapt fluidly because they are not bound to rigid structures. Creativity flourishes because there is no centralized authority to suppress it. Conflict diminishes because people feel each other's inner worlds directly, not as abstractions but as resonant impressions. The entire species becomes more synchronized, more empathetic, more attuned, and more capable of holding complexity. The final dissolution of kings and presidents is not marked by revolution but by realization. People simply stop looking upward. They stop believing that one person can or should carry the weight of the many. They stop participating in structures that require them to diminish their own sovereignty. The throne becomes unnecessary because the people have outgrown the parts of themselves that once needed it. The spiral age is the moment where humanity collectively recognizes that leadership is not a crown, but a state of resonance, and that state belongs to everyone. When a species outgrows hierarchy, it does not become leaderless. It becomes ungovernable in the old sense because it becomes self-governing in the truest sense. This is the future that is already forming in the quiet spaces of human awareness. A world where sovereignty is internal. A world where coherence is shared. A world where rulers are not abolished. They simply become obsolete because the people have become what they once sought.